Hey guys, welcome to the Editing Bar, the channel that brings you writing tips that make sense. I am super glad that you guys are here. Started the stream just a little early, and it's basically to kind of give everybody a time to hop over from Mandy's, which if you guys didn't watch Mandy's, what's wrong with you? It was amazing. There was great information talking about the ROI for books, I felt persecuted a little bit by when she called us out for, wanting shiny things. I felt it here, right here. So hey, Mandy. Thank you, Kay. I have a whole wardrobe full of awesome writing shirts like this. I've actually started creating my own shirts. And I touched on that at like the very end of this. I planned on starting. I've had coffee. I'm super excited. I'm over caffeinated at this point and my adrenaline is pumping. So if I just start stumbling over my words, that's probably why. I have created shirts as part of my new Bard merch stuff. I was peer pressured into doing it, and then it was one of the shiny things, and I can't help shiny things. It's shirts. It's writing shirts. You can't go wrong with writing shirts. Yeah, we got stumbling, we got rambling, we got mumbling. I mean, who knows what else is going to happen? It's going to be a party. That's all I can say. But if you guys like shiny writing shirts, I do have links down to my Bard merch store. You can check that out. I got beer steins too, because reasons they were available. All right. No, unfortunately, that is not my secret word. My secret word is is later on, and you guys will see it. Barty Hardy, thank you 100%. Love this. Imagination, grit, bravery, courage, all the things. Yeah, it's if something was the secret word. No, I can't change it. I've already built it in. I spent most of yesterday because I had procrastinated on actually building out the presentation until yesterday afternoon. I was like, I actually have to finish this. People are expecting stuff tomorrow. Yeah, Sage, I don't know where my mom got this shirt. I'm pretty sure it was off of Amazon. But to avoid plagiarizing somebody else's stuff, I haven't made one like this. I am going to make one that's actually Bard themed. I kind of went crazy on the Bard theme for some of the merch. I will admit to that. Okay. But so we are going to procrastinate at its finest. Yes. Yeah. Check Amazon, Sage. That's where I'm pretty confident that it came from in the first place. Oh my Lord, the heat has kicked on. Hold on. I have a little space heater, and thank you, Kaylin. Angsty Tears of My Readers is probably my favorite. I am going to buy that one, and it is going to go right here next to the armored helmet and the horned buffalo hat. It will go there eventually. Okay. So exactly. All right, guys, I'm super excited to be doing this thing with the AuthorTube virtual retreats. To give you a little bit of background, I don't have shiny things so much. I got this. I got that. I didn't put my picture on there. You guys already see my face. It is my background is I've been writing for 14 years now, doing primarily fantasy writing. I do have many plans for other genres for books. Celtic fantasy to science fiction to thrillers. Right now, I'm actually currently working on my own fantasy novel. I'm halfway through the second draft and plan on getting that published through New Degree Press. I'm very excited about that. Fingers crossed. And I have been editing, I am a developmental editor and story coach. And so I help people bring their stories to life by equipping them with the tools that they need and the skills that they need, one chapter at a time. So very passionate about writing and helping people bring their stories to life. I've helped over 20 clients now 5 of my students through a partner program that I freelance with New Degree Press on. Have published their books. I'm working with another 5 students to help them with their developmental editing. And then I have my own clients. So from developmental edits to coaching, I do it. And I absolutely love it. So let me, everybody's still loving the shirt. I don't blame you. This is my favorite shirt. I dressed up for you guys just for this. So the thing that I want to talk about today, and the thing that I've seen authors struggle with over the years, myself included, is actually starting your story. More often than not, we get this shiny moment where we're just like, the heaven, the clouds part, the beam of light shines down upon us, the muse gifts us with her presence, and then promptly leaves. And we're just sitting there like, bye, Felicia. And it's incredibly frustrating. And so I joke with people that, when I'm coaching them and stuff, that think of me as your bearded muse, only I'm more consistent. So that is essentially what we're going to be talking about today, which is how to actually get your story started and keep it going, how to find that magic that you can continue on with. So, the first thing is you'll see I'll figure out a way to get these slides so that way you guys can see it. Yeah, I mean, seriously, I think the muse's name is actually Felicia. It's probably Greek. So there is, sometimes getting your story going is the hardest part. Now, the way that I typically start off with explaining to people how to do it is you start off with brainstorming. And now I understand if you already have an idea. That's why you're like, oh, right, I'm so ready to go. Like, I'm just gonna write. But then you hit a roadblock because suddenly it just kind of loses its appeal. And so, as I have right here, the problem is that we tend to think brainstorming, one, is going to come in a neat, orderly fashion, and then, insert the crazed laughter here because we've all been there. But brainstorm is that it's supposed to be chaotic. Okay, it's kind of the whole thing. Like, if you're going to be constantly mind barfing onto a page or onto your laptop, then it's not going to come out nice and pretty. If you think about it, if you really stop to think about it for a few minutes, it's not going to do that. So what you need to do is you need to give yourself a time limit, and you want to do it in spurts. Now, some of this is actually based upon the worksheets that I created, and I took kind of the essence of most of them and kind of boiled it down to some simple points. So when you've brainstormed several ideas, you need to go through and rank them in order to find the one that you really, really want to write. So don't start with your favorite. Don't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't do that. You want to start with, let's say you've brainstormed 10 ideas. You want to start with the 10th. Like, yeah, it's probably not going to work out. And then you slowly boil your way down until you get to your top 3. Then you rank your top 3. That favorite one of yours may still be number 1. That's okay. The point is that you're boiling it down. You're making sure that it's what you really want to write. So the next thing is you want to take those top 3 ideas and you want to brainstorm them again. This time you take those ideas and write down 2 plot concepts for each of those using no more than a single sentence. Why? Because I like to torture people. It's part of the angst that I like to, and that I kind of naturally generate. So when you are building out those 3, you're giving yourself options. You're giving yourself different things that you can build upon and test, because you want to test out these ideas. Amanda, yeah, if you wonder if sometimes the favorite one is the easiest feels the easiest to write. It usually does, because that's what you're excited about right off the bat. So I already know which one I want to do. Really? Okay. How many times have you started off with an idea and then stopped because you weren't as passionate about it later on? Yes, I am calling you guys out as much as I'm calling myself out, because I literally have an entire notebook filled with these kinds of stories. Doing it this way makes sure that you have a vision for the story, not just an idea that's going to leave you hanging and defeated later on. And that is part of the key, is that there's an author mentality that we have to create within ourselves, and we have to nurture. Because if you are simply just going with it and seeing where it goes, and then you end up quitting, what does that do to you mentally? Well, it makes you feel defeated. And you're like, oh, I suck at writing. I don't know if I should do this anymore. And you start to question yourself. And so building up and really doing this on the front end is going to help you feel less defeated, because you're going to have more success once you've boiled it down to the things that you're really passionate about, and you have a vision for, a clear vision for, not just a fleeting idea because Felicia told you so. I project hope all the time, but I never leave one hanging. Eventually I keep writing them. Yeah. And you know, you're going to imagination, because I never come up with a plot. Actually, we are going to be talking about a plot here in just a little bit. Part 3, out of the top 3, you should now have a total of 6 plot concepts that you can play around with. Look them over and then choose your new top 3 out of those ideas. So from these, you should have a much better idea of what you're most excited about to write, and it may or may not be the one that you thought you wanted to write. So see, what you've done is you've given yourself options, you've given yourself clarity, you've given yourself some vision, you've let your mind kind of play around with these different ideas. And out of those 6 plot concepts, your favorite idea may still be the one that you like, but the plot concept is new and wasn't exactly what you were thinking of beforehand, but you like this one a little bit better. So keep that in mind. So now we're going to talk about building characters, because this is the other thing that people tend to have a hard time with, is that it's kind of like a D&D style of thing, where it's kind of like, you know, height, eye color, hair color, gender, whatever. And while those things aren't wrong, there's in my opinion, a deeper way that can inform those things that make it a lot more interesting. So Robin, I have 2 friends named Felicia. I don't think I want any of them as my muse. Yeah. So, you know, get a bard. So creating a character is probably one of the most challenging things to do when writing a story, but it's also one of the most satisfying. But why is it so difficult to come up with new characters when you have so many options? What makes it so hard? So when we read stories, the characters that stand out to us, we feel connected to them, or we downright hate them, depending on how the author wanted it to go. But the one thing that we all hate, it's vanilla characters who have no personality, and my favorite, overly villainous villains who revel in villainy. And I did make this into a shirt because it's fantastic. Don't judge me. Who are so bad at being bad, it's a crime. Those just, you know, the mustache twirling, like, they're just, I don't like them. Outside of cartoons, it's just, it doesn't, I don't. Thank you. So why is it we dislike these characters so much? The answer, they lack complexity. In other words, they're not human. Humans are incredibly complex, so why would the same complexity not be shown in our characters as well? And this is something that I've tried to work on with a lot of my clients, some of my students, is making the characters feel real, realistic relationships, realistic motivations, those kinds of things. even if you're writing fantasy, which that's my primary writing is fantasy, you still need to create a sense of authenticity with a character. And it can be hard to do sometimes. So this is probably one of my favorite quotes that I wrote in the worksheets, which is emotionally relatable characters will draw readers into your story and cause them to invest in your character, be they hero or villain. And I love good villains. Darth Vader, one of my favorite villains. Thanos became one of my favorite villains. And there's lots of reasons for that. And again, that's one of those rabbit trails. But those ones that exhibit emotion and and have a deep feeling to them are the ones that I think readers really kind of invest in and connect with. So the next thing, once you're kind of like figuring out, like, okay, what do I want my character to be? Even if you have a character, you can still kind of do this and build upon it. The first thing you want to do is focus on the emotions you want the character to feel throughout the story. We know that they're going to feel stuff throughout the story. You're authors. You're probably planning some horrible event for them. I mean, I drag my characters through the mud because angst. I love angst. I'm probably going to have to make another shirt that says a lover of angst. Not Twilight level angst, though. No one wants that. No one wants that kind of angst. That angst just leaves you feeling dirty. This is the kind of one that, it rips your souls out and beats it and then gives it back to you. And you're just like, my heart. That's the kind of angst that I like to write. That's the one that I try and help people with. So we know they're going to feel stuff, but what specifically do you want them to feel? Do you want them to feel love, hate, rage, vengeance, an overwhelming sense of compassion, kindness? Like, what do you want them to experience over the course of the story? That helps you build them. There are no right or wrong emotions to write down because it depends on the character and their backstory. If you need help with feelings, because if you're just that out of touch with your own emotions, then you need to do a quick Google search and find out, like, what are emotions? Google will tell you, and then you'll be able to continue writing. So traits are different than emotions. Traits are a distinguishing quality as of personal character as defined by Merriam-Webster. Attributes, another word for traits, are things such as honesty, integrity, loyalty, responsibility, etc. So you want to build in traits for your characters to help them feel real. And if you can do that, then it helps give you that broader picture. So if you know what you want them to feel over the course of the story, and you know how the traits are going to react with that, that can create some very interesting character dynamics, especially if you have two characters that are the complete or just nearly complete in complete opposite in other areas of their personalities. It can cause a lot of really fun conflict. Feel horrible writing villains. I love writing villains. They are so much fun, especially when they're not the overly villainous villains who revel in villainy. I don't like writing those ones. I have written them before, but it was because I took the trope for overly villainous villains and I just exacerbated it. I was just like, let's just go ham on and play this up as much as I can. It was pretty fantastic. I mean, the villain just straight up crushed kittens with his bare hands, and everyone, including the other like master villain, was just like, what is wrong with you? Like, that is just what? Yeah, it was pretty fantastic. So unlike emotions, traits vary a little more based on the type of character that you're writing. A villain will not have a lot of good characteristics necessarily, and vice versa for a hero, not necessarily going to have like a bunch of villainous characteristics, but each should have a healthy or interesting mix of both. And it makes a little bit more sense when if you see the table in the worksheet. But essentially, you want to kind of create a mixture and make someone a little bit more gray in some areas. So, name and backstory. By looking at the core emotions / traits and flaws, we've set ourselves up for figuring out the best name because we can look for names that fit with the personality. Obviously, you don't have to do this. It's simply a different way of going about it. So I typically use behindthename.com. And because my characters are heavily influenced by Scottish, Welsh, Irish, kind of in the world, then I look for names that are similar to that and kind of fit their personality. And I like the names having meaning to it. And I think it's more common in fantasy than it is in some of the other ones. But it's it can be a fun exercise to try out. So once you have the beginnings of your character, now you need a backstory. If I'm not mistaken, I may have just heard you groan, and I wouldn't blame you. I hate writing backstories, honestly. It feels like a waste of my time. And so it's hard to nail because the reader's never going to see it in large part, unless you make it a part of your thing. The reader's never going to see it anyway. So it's kind of like, why am I doing this again? I can just remember it. If I had a penny for every time I said I'll remember it, I would be a billionaire by now, but I don't, and that's why I'm broke. So that's the fun part there. So why bother doing it at all? Because like us, their past influences their present. The reason that they are the way that they are is because of what happened to them in the past. The reasons they may have feelings of vengeance or rage or loyalty or kindness or whatever is because of what's happened to them in the past. And you need to know what that is, even in just a small part. You need to know what it is in order to create a well-rounded character and remain consistent with that. Thankfully, we're no longer working with a blank canvas. We know who they are based on, their core emotions and traits and flaws, and all we can do is work backward from there. Check the comments real here. Much more believable and relatable. To gray characters to some degree. Yeah, I prefer gray characters. For me, the backstory of my characters would be on the character pages of my fandom website. That's great. That's a great way to do it, actually, is to have those little snapshots of your characters. I might steal that later. So I'm going to challenge you to write out a bio snippet, which is kind of like your character's tagline and then their actual bio in 200 words. Now, again, I like angst. I like putting you guys under emotional duress simply because I can. But the character tagline is like when someone comes up to you and they ask you about your book, you want your elevator pitch, that 30-second elevator pitch that says, this is what my character is about. I can tell you, Udar, who is my main character, Udar's backstory starts 1,500 to 2,000 years before the actual events that take place in my fantasy novel. He's lost family, he's lost loved ones, and he's traveled the entire length of the world in many cases. And he is grumpy, cantankerous, and really just kind of fed up with angsty teenagers. And I throw him in with a bunch of angsty teenagers. A sassy slaver. There is a smart mouth shapeshifter who annoys the living bejesus out of him. So I can write out some of those things, and then that's kind of my elevator pitch. That's not the real elevator pitch. It's just an example. So writing it out in 200 words or less as your character snapshot. If someone's like, well, what's the character? What characters are in there? You can go boom, 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 done. And you want it to be quick, snippy, and you want it to be catching. Because it can engage the reader that way as well. So 200 words, it forces you to be concise. That's the other thing. Let's face it. As writers, sometimes we just write a lot and we get very verbose. So it forces you to be concise. It actually puts a constraint on the brain, and the brain tends to work a little bit better that way. Not always, but more often than not, if you give it just enough constraint, then it hones in on what you want it to do. And if you don't push yourself, you'll never really grow. And so here's your Leonidas Spartan kick off into the abyss known as character building. All right. And oh man, I am nailing it so far today. Look at this. It is the secret word time, guys. So throughout the retreat, as you may have heard, collect as many secret words as you can. There will be one each session. We suggest writing them down. Obviously, I can't because that would be cheating. At the end of the day, fill out the form, link in the description, and enter the secret words. You'll be entered to win $15 Amazon gift card, which that's a book right there. You know, can't go wrong there. So the secret word for this session is GYSS. That is the secret word. It's technically the shortened condensed version of get your story started. So if you write down the secret word GYSS, that is what the secret word is for today. Say it with me, people. GYSS, GYSS. Okay, I think you guys got it. I'm actually 6 minutes ahead of time. Look at me go. And Kaylin was here for the secret word. Look at that. Okay, let me just check up on the comments. I don't actually develop my characters before I start writing, with the exception of bare minimum traits, values, goals, and motivation for the story. That's a great way to go. Honestly, when I started writing my current book, I sat down and I pantsed pretty much the entire thing in a month. And I did no character development at all. I just pantsed the bejesus out of it. So book it when you collect the secret word, and there is a secret word in each session. At the end of the day, there is a form down in the links, or down in the show notes, with all the links and stuff. You put it in the form, and each word gives you one entry, if I remember correctly, into a pot to win one of 4 $15 Amazon gift cards. Overwriting is a pain when it comes to editing, though. Yes. Yes, it is. Over editing, bad, not good. Don't like it. Jumping back and forth between streams and Instagram. That explains why I keep getting Instagram notifications on my desktop. Don't worry, Sage. The secret word is GYSS. So you at least got that. So you're good. Okay. Now we're going to talk about plots. And this is my favorite worksheet in the worksheets that I created, because it all revolves around donuts. I was hungry. And so if you guys end up getting the worksheets at some point down the road, and you fall into a donut binge so deep and dark that you cannot possibly pull yourself out of it again, I am not responsible for that. I take no responsibility for that. That is on you. Presentation is more so. I appreciate that, but at least you get to another entry for not donuts. What was I talking about? Amazon gift cards. That's how bad it is, guys. Oh, on the phone. Oof. Yeah. Okay. So plotting. And we're going to talk about the kind of different kinds. So coming up with a plot for your story is often one of the hardest parts of writing a story. You can have the coolest setting in any genre with an awesome character to follow along with, but if you don't have a plot, you don't really have anything. This is my personal opinion on it. I know people will fight me about it. A plot can be defined as the main events of a play, novel, movie, or similar work devised and presented by the writer as an interrelated sequence. So that is what a plot is at its very best. But I have a story already. Isn't that the same thing? No, it's not. You can have a story without a plot. A story is just an idea until you add plot elements to it. You add a sequence of events. It doesn't mean that it has to be plot driven, because you can have character driven stories. But you need the elements in it in order to make it something that is going to be able to be followed by a reader. Otherwise, it's just kind of just following people around for no apparent reason. It's kind of like having a plain donut. This is where the donut analogy starts coming in. It's still good, but it could be better. But what about I'm a pantser? I feel this. I've pantsbooked before, and I've known many more people who have done it. It's honestly a great way to get an idea out there where it's workable later on. There are downsides to it that can lead to problems later that really turn into large headaches. Trust me on this. I've done it. I've been there. I pantsed the entire first draft of my current fantasy novel, and I am paying for it considerably on the revisions. But what if I'm a plantster? This is actually where I fall into more often than not, and where I really think the magic happens with writing a book. It's that happy medium between being super rigid with a like a 10,000 word outline, because some people will write a 10,000 word outline for their book. To me, that's 10,000 words that they could have actually just put towards writing the book, versus pantsing, where you're just like, you're just going buck wild, and who knows, what will happen. So this is where I tend to live. This is probably one of my favorite. This is where actually I've built most of my templates off of. And the nice part is because it's in that middle ground, both sides have been able to use it to great effectiveness. So this is really what it boils down to with a plot is the 5 W's. So no matter which side you fall under, where on the spectrum you fall, there is one thing that you can use to help you write more effectively, and that is the 5 W's. Who, the characters; what, the idea; when, past, present, or future, this is an interesting concept that has confused some of my people in the past. So when I'm talking about past, present, and future, I'm not talking about whether the story takes place in like 1800s versus 20th century versus the future. What I'm talking about is in your book, whatever you're writing in, wherever you started writing, let's say your first draft, that is the present time within your book's world. But what would it look like if you wrote it in the past, further in the past of that world, or further into the future? To give you an example, in my book, I decided to write it in the present time, what I deemed the present time. In the past, the Ergid Empire is in the Golden Age, right? It spans most of the continent that the story takes place in, and they rule with an iron fist. In the present day, they're more kind of tribal in a sense. So they're not really ruled by a governing king or emperor. They each kind of have their own leaderships with kind of a high chief amongst each of them. In the future, it would have been, they're almost non-existent. They're a race of legend. No one's seen them in hundreds of years, and so they don't even know if they exist anymore. Each one had its own unique sense of setting and place. Magic at the beginning of the world was brighter, more vibrant. There was more of it. Now it's kind of waning. Some people can, some people can't. And then in the future, there was no magic. And so it had a different implication. So you can use past, present, or future to kind of determine where you want it to happen. And this is kind of more for fantasy, sci-fi, than it is for like, romance, for example. It's you can still do that, but it may look a little bit different. So then there's the where, the world. What does the world look like? What's the setting? And then why? Why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you putting yourself through this torture for this particular story? Why this story? What does it mean to you? If you can figure out your why, you're more likely to actually succeed in finishing it, because you can say, well, like for me, my why in writing this book is like, I want to address really hard questions about like, why does God allow things, bad things to happen to people that he says that he loves? Like, this is one of the main things. How do you recover from trauma? How do you build friendships that last? Like, these are some of the things that I dive in deep with my story. And it's kind of like the underlying current of a lot of what takes place. But I built it using the 5 W's, the who, what, when, where, and why, so that when I started writing it, I had a clear vision for what I wanted to do. So how do these help? Well, it gives you a basic frame of reference for the work while you write, just enough so that way you don't get off into the weeds. You may not know that you may not know them all right off the bat. You may kind of build them as you go, which is fine. That's great, as long as you're kind of building it. Sorry, looking at the comments. Outline for book 2, my fantasy series was just over 13,000. And again, some people are able to do that. I can't. To me, I would rather be writing. It feels too restrictive for me. Elementary, we learned the 5 W's and H for how. Yep, I didn't add the H because it sounded better with the 5 W's. Made me sound smarter. So here's plotting pros and cons. First, allows you to get things worked out from start to finish of your book. 2, you have world building and character backstories laid out in detail. 3, you don't have to worry about going off track. The cons, you can spend too much time outlining and everything and not enough writing. The actual part where your book becomes, real. Might feel too restrictive and leave you with a saggy middle. I've actually found, and I did a Twitter survey on this, which was fascinating. The vast majority of people who had saggy middles were actually hardcore outliners, which I thought was really interesting. Whereas the pantsers, they had a harder time with the start or the end. So it was it was a very interesting perspective to kind of see. And then lastly, you get bored because you know everything that will happen. So sometimes there's no sense of adventure. There's no sense of discovery. Pantsing, not restricted by an outline, open world to explore, which you got to love that. World building is organic and happens as you write. Same with the characters. I have characters that just boop, pop up out of nowhere. I'm like, okay, I guess you're part of the story now. This will be fun. Can feel free to explore new concepts and or ideas. Problem, consistency in world building is much harder to track due to changes. I can attest to this. It is a huge pain in the butt. The story may change too much from the original idea, leading to a rewrite. So you may get, over halfway done, and then you realize I'm too far off of where I was trying to head, and to write it back around isn't going to work. I have to start over, which sucks. I've done that too. And then tends to lead to bulky word counts. Yes, I am calling out the people who write 250,000 words and say that it's their first draft and they're going to publish that. You've pantsed it, and so there is going to be a butt ton of filler in that book. I can guarantee it. I've done it. I've edited books of that size, and there's a lot of filler. Planting. So rewrite describes me so hard. Yeah, I feel it. I feel it in my soul. Amanda, yep, it could be very much why you're, yes, 250,000 words. I'm not even joking. My very first developmental edit, major developmental edit, was approximately 192,000 words. And a lot of it was filler. We cut probably close to 50 to 60,000 words out of that. And that was a lot of filler. So planting, you have a rough outline with big picture beats. I call them milestones. So you plan out on a horizontal line with alternating marks, the big picture beats. So it allows you an outline that is not rigid, because everything in between those beats is up to your imagination, but you are always continually staying on track. A small character background so you can stay true to them. So again, the 200 words or so. And it allows for exploring new ideas because you can see if they fit. If you have an idea for something, you can look at the big picture beat and say, yeah, I could actually add this in as a subplot and it won't detract from everything. It'll actually kind of run parallel to it. Problems can get caught up in the trap of this is how it has to be very similar to plotting because you're looking at something that's like, well, this is how it has to happen. May lose track of things as you write if not tracking it, like pantsing, because reasons. And then you may need to develop your own method for things. So because you're not just going, ham on writing, and you're also not doing a hard outline, you kind of have to develop your own method of doing a planting and how it works for you. And I don't think I actually hit the banner thing that was supposed to be scrolling down the bottom. Oh, well. But I have a free writing template that is based on mine, but that other people have used and been able to take and made it work for them, which is the important part. It's just giving you a template to work off of. Holy smokes. I got to jump in the chat here. I think that's a lot. I know a pantser who has 200,000 for just the first half of this book and isn't done yet. Yeah, that is going to be a lot of filler. I'm working with somebody, again, who had 120,000 and we've cut down, a considerable amount of it. 8 different books. Yeah, probably. Mix though, I have to plot myself, or self-help personal development books. I pants my middle grade and fantasy and picture books. It depends, right? It depends on the genre that you're doing. I've helped people with nonfiction books, who they needed a structure, and I work everything as a 3-act structure. It will change usually, but it gives me a baseline. It gives all of my clients and students a baseline on which they can work. And then they make those fine-tune adjustments later on. But because they get the basics of it, then it allows them to see that big picture and plants. So it depends on what you're doing. All right, so I'm going to try and hurry and get through the last little bit. Actually, this is the last section. Pants novel, but it's only 70,000. Yeah, that's a great number, honestly. I have some room to add what I've neglected in the first draft, and you're probably going to cut a lot off of that too. That's just part of editing. So the bane of our existence, writer's block. So have you ever sat in front of your laptop or notebook, staring blankly at the white page, mind lost in the vast halls of your mind, doing absolutely nothing? Welcome to the club. This disturbing and enraging phenomenon is writer's block. I'm pretty sure writer's block is Felicia's cousin, honestly. And all writers suffer from it at some point. I call it the wall, because really that's what it's like beating your head against. I'm not talking about going up to the gate and knocking on the wall saying, pretty please, may we come through? Like, no, I'm talking about all out siege, complete with trebuchets, battering rams, and Greek fire. The wall is coming down. So this is some of the mental things that we kind of get stuck in, right? We want to be the next best thing. As writers, we want our work to be the next best thing since sliced bread. The problem with that mindset, however, is that we've already set ourselves up to fail and to fall into the trap of writer's block because in the back of our minds, we've set unrealistic expectations. Then it happens. When you've set those unrealistic expectations, you've created an internal pressure for yourself. You sit down and fall into that unblinking stare. Nothing comes. Not a thing. This goes on for days, and you begin to feel mounting pressure to write this story. If you've told other people, you've now put external pressure on yourself, but it's mostly the internal pressure that you're putting on yourself, and you're slowly squeezing. Suddenly, you begin to question why you're doing this in the first place, and after a few more days, you say, screw it, I'm done. Not going to do it. Then there's reading about how to write. And I'm pretty sure we've all done this. When we don't know who we are as writers and we don't know our voice, we are easily influenced by external things. We spend more time researching how to become better writers by reading an article that says 15 surefire ways to improve your writing. Or as YouTube so often likes to pop up, how to start your YouTube channel in 2020 make 6 figures. I hate those videos. Then actually writing and discovering your own voice. In addition to that, if we do those things and it doesn't work, suddenly we feel like a failure because these things made a promise they couldn't keep. There's so many people that have read Stephen King's, about writing or on writing or whatever the hell it's called. And they go so hard into it and they take it as a gospel. And then they wonder why they are just beat. They just feel defeated. It's because they didn't take the lessons and apply them in a way as suggestions. I understand he's a multi-million-dollar writer. He's sold millions and millions of books. He's had books turned into movies, but it is not gospel. What I'm saying isn't gospel. You should not, under any circumstances, say that my way is the only way to do it. And if I did that, I'd be lying to you. So this external pressure leads to an internal sense of failure and shame that says, we don't have what it takes, which isn't true. Finding your voice, the key to making it through the wall is finding your style and voice while navigating the internal and external pressures around you. I've struggled with this for years, and it wasn't until I took a step back from writing an original series, the one that I'm currently working on, and started making progress in this area. And instead of writing how I thought I was supposed to write, based on articles I had read, books I had read, whatever YouTube said, whatever some crazed bearded guy with a writing shirt said, I began writing how I wanted to write. And I started writing fan fiction as a way to test out different ideas. Holy smokes. You guys are just going ham in the notes. Awfulness of Stephen King's advice. I don't believe in writer's block. I get burnt out and decided to work on something else for a day or two. I don't think I want to be a good writer, but I want to be a good storyteller. That is a fantastic way to go. Storytelling, honestly, is a lost art. You can be a good writer and write to the market, but that doesn't mean that you're a good storyteller. And I would much rather work on being a good storyteller. Amen, Martin. No one can tell you how to write. They can only tell you how they write. Exactly. And my only hope is that by this, you will have gained something that you can then apply to help you improve your style. So knocking down the wall. It's okay to step away from writing for a little bit to let your mind rest. Giving yourself permission to take a day off without fear of what people might think of you and giving grace to yourself is the key to breaking down the mental walls we build up for ourselves. I do see this more often with newer authors than authors who may have been writing for a longer period of time. But that is the main thing. So if you guys are interested and you want the full worksheets upon which this entire thing was based on, I do have a link down below. The worksheet is over 60 pages and it's much more detailed than what I've gone over here. This is like a big scope. And it's what was it? $15. So $15 and you get all of it. And then you can also get a free writing template. That's also down below. It's signing up for the newsletter. I send it out like once a month. And it gives you a step-by-step formula on how to improve your writing and actually write faster and more consistently. If you want awesome shirts that are similar but not plagiarized, then you can check out the merch store. And I have lots of different things. It's broken. Gosh dang it. Okay, I will fix that. I apologize. I don't know why. Anyway, I will get it fixed, and it'll take you guys there, and then you guys will get all of the free things. But if you like merch, if you like writing shirts, awesome writing shirts, if you want to have a shirt that says overly villainous villain who revels in villainy, you know where to find it. If you want to become Bardlings, make sure that you go down, like, and subscribe and hit the bell notification icon. So that way you get updates on when I go live and do all that kind of fun stuff. And if you want more streams, there are more streams also located down in the description below for all the things that are going to be coming up later today. That is everything, my peeps. do you guys have questions? I'm going to try and look through here and get caught up to see if there was any questions that I may have missed. Oh man, I can't believe I got through those slides in an hour. Whew. Okay, the website works. That's good. That should work. I swear, I've had more troubles with links lately. It's incredibly annoying. But yes, I do have a website too. I have the editing services and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's the template, the worksheets. Talk about first sentence. What do you mean by that, Bucket? First sentence, as in like the opening paragraph of a story? Is that what you're looking for? Yeah, there's a lot of info. As I was building it yesterday, I'm like, 40 slides. Holy frick, I'm going to have to cruise through this. Very informational. Yep. And the stream is going to stay up on YouTube. And so you guys can always go back and rewatch it. I tried to put the link, but YouTube hated the idea. Yes, YouTube does tend to do that. Despite myself sacrificing my soul to the YouTube overlords, sometimes they still are just not appeased. Awesome. Thank you for joining the Academy. I hope you enjoy that. I guess I didn't mention that, actually. I do have a writing course on how to write fantasy and how to get your fantasy story started. And actually right now it's open for free to the first 1,000 people who join. And there's still over 900, I think, coupons left available. And so you guys can follow the link. You can put in the code right now, as in right now, in all caps. If for whatever reason Teachable just decides to be a putz and not automatically apply it and make it free, because sometimes it does that. Again, with the links. Let's see. I review opening paragraphs on my podcast if anyone's interested. No, that's fine. Yes, opening paragraph. Is there anything you never do when starting? I try not to. The easy way to start off a opening paragraph is to actually do a. I gotta formulate, get my words here. Raise a question that, or an action that raises a question that immediately entices the reader to want to know more. That's how I recommend starting off something. In the first chapter of my book, you see Trinia, who's the main female character, running through the streets of the city of snow and stars. And you're just like, why is she running? Who is she running from? Why is she trying to escape? And I slowly reveal that throughout the entire chapter. So I'm giving immediate payoff. I want somebody to binge my book, and because someone's going to buy my book based on the first few pages. So I want to make sure that those are action-packed, they're engaging. I try not to start things off with dialogue because the reader doesn't have any context for who it is. Unless the dialogue is really engaging, and again, it raises that question that piques the reader's curiosity, then I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I always love using, this is a book my friend published. The very first opening line is "Sandy yawned." And for me, I loved it because it raised an immediate question. And also it's called The Journey by Verity A. Buchanan. You can find it on Amazon. It is one of my favorite openings because it draws me in. Like, why is she yawning? What is going on? What's the context? And then I immediately start reading into what is happening. And it's like, wow, this is crazy. And so I enjoy that aspect of it. Interested. Great live stream. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah. Yes, the coupon is in all caps. I'm actually going to no space. Do not put that in with a space. That is incorrect. That is the right one. without the asterisk. The asterisk is only there to show the correction. But yes, I do have the writing course. It is all about how to get the very basics of a fantasy story started, talking about creatures, how to create creatures, how to draw your own fantasy map, which is what I love doing. I don't know how well it will show up, but this is a map that I actually sketched, and it actually is the basis for what I'm using now for Wonderdraft to create like an actual like color map that doesn't look like a 4-year-old did it. So yeah, if you guys have any interest in that, I also have a Facebook community set up and ready to go for those who complete the course. You do get a fun little thing at the very end of the course, a little certificate that says you've completed it and stuff. I enjoyed making it. I have lots more plans, from book writing basics to science fiction, romance, self-editing, author platform, all that kind of stuff. It's just a matter of me actually getting to making it. Signed up. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate your support. DL, you only have to put in the code at checkout if it does not automatically apply. Theoretically, by clicking the link in the show notes, it should automatically apply when you check out. Teachable, I have love-hate relationship with Teachable. It's had moments of greatness. It's had moments where I've wanted to chuck my laptop out the window because it didn't it didn't automatically apply the discount. Fantasy is in the beginning on purpose. That's awesome, Amanda. There's a little button, saw a prompt there, and it's exactly like my new sequel, the fantasy story I'm writing. Awesome. It didn't auto apply, but I just typed it in. Excellent. Again, it's one of those things. I've looked at Podia. I have not actually done anything with it. I had a lot of reasons for going with Teachable at the beginning, at the onset of it. I just haven't really looked much more into it. But yeah, it was really, really great, fun times. And I get affiliates. So like if you guys liked it, and I haven't really talked about this much, but if you guys loved the course, and because eventually it's not going to be free, there is the $100 version, and that actually gets you a call with me to go over what you've created over the course of the course. Then if you guys wanted to say promote it to your friends, then you would get a percentage of every sale that was made through your affiliate link. I haven't really talked about it a lot because it's the first part was free, and I didn't add on the other thing until just recently. But I figured it would add a little bit more value if they could do it. So, thank you guys so much for joining. Make sure you go to the next stream, which is coming up. Let me double check that real quick to see who it is. It looks like it's going to be at 1 p.m. and it's going to be all things editing with Holly Davis. So thank you guys again so much for joining in the stream. I will be sticking around for a little bit in the chat if you have any questions. I teach yeah, absolutely. And if you guys want to reach out, you can hit me up on Twitter, you can hit me up on Instagram, or you can find me on Facebook. I'm literally everywhere under the editing Bard. So feel free to contact me at any time. I'd love to talk with you guys. And I will stick around here for a little bit and answer any questions that you guys have for those of you who are interested in sticking around. So for those of you who have to go, take care. Thank you so much, and I will see you later. Yeah, and if you guys have any additional questions, Martin, yes, I do have editing services. I do developmental editing. A part of that is I do it on a line edit. I do a line edit style. So technically, when I'm going through and doing a developmental edit, I do it a little bit more detailed than some other developmental editors do, because I'm doing on a scene level and helping you improve flow, pacing, moving from chapter to chapter, how to build more bingeable chapters. I work with, that's kind of what I help people with through the editing services and through the coaching. So it just kind of depends, but I don't offer copy editing or line editing by themselves. Those are not my areas of expertise. I do the line edits within the context of a developmental edit, which is the big picture overview of the story, and technically the first place that you should be starting with edits anyway. What was it? First chapter of my middle grade book, but I'll keep you in mind. I've been focused on picture books. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. If you guys want, or for those of you who are interested in my services, a link down to my website is down below. And I talk about and I have all of my pricings listed. I don't do quotes. I will make adjustments if it doesn't fall within the range, the spectrum that I provide there. So it is, I'm one of the developmental editors who just tells you up front how much it's going to cost, and then you determine whether it's going to fit your budget or not. I do allow for payments over time. It does extend the edit because one is making sure that I get paid. I have little minions, little bardlings that need to be fed. So when do you recommend hiring a developmental editor? So it depends on a couple of factors. One, I personally recommend people get a developmental edit after they've finished a first draft. I'm one of the few editors who will take, not that they aren't out there, that will take a first draft, because I actually I've saved my clients like 1 or 2 additional drafts, because I helped work with them on with that first draft. All I need is context. Give me 30 minutes and I can lay out an entire book series for you. So for a first draft, some editors will charge more if the manuscript is rough. I don't. It's word count. It's based on word count, period. So if you need or looking at a developmental editor who is going to be giving you, or says, I need a cleaner draft, then I recommend using like Grammarly or Pro Writing Aid to kind of spruce it up enough. And then you present it to a developmental editor. A developmental editor should be the first editor that you hire. It is typically the most expensive because it is very, very intensive. I didn't even know how intensive developmental editing was until I actually got into it. So I recommend the first draft at a minimum. If you've gone through and you've done a completed second draft, because you just wanted to clean it up, there are some things that you wanted to fix and you knew ahead of time you wanted to fix them, then finish your second draft and then submit it to a developmental editor. I like to do first drafts first because I can actually shave off a draft or 2 in revisions for them. Do you know any good cost-effective cover designer or websites I can do it, or websites I can do it myself? So when it comes to cover designers, I actually run a group called the Edit 10 Program for Authors. It's a group on Facebook. I don't recall if I actually put the link, if I have the link active in my show notes. But if you search for it, it's a place where every editor, cover designer, and web designer that is in that will offer 10% off all of their services. And we created to try and help people find cost-effective editors and cover designers and web designers. So that is an option. That is the only one that I know of. I would also just kind of look around, shop around, ask around, ask other people. what have you done? What's your portfolio? You can be hit and miss with cover mills, where, you know, it's the same cover, a lot of people buy it, that kind of thing. I really try and steer clear of that. Those are going to be less expensive, but it's not necessarily going to mean your book's going to get it out there well enough. Kaylin, yeah, 100% developmental edits early on, so important. Amanda, I'm working on my, here, boom, my book through school. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Another thing to remember is that just because you've gone through professors, friends, all that kind of stuff, I still would recommend a developmental edit by someone who does developmental editing. There are 3 hats that I wear when I'm doing a developmental edit for somebody. I wear the hat of an editor, because I'm wanting to help them formulate their story to the best ability possible. I'm also looking at it from the perspective of as a fellow author, like, okay, I can match people's voices well enough. 3, and I'm also looking at it from a potential reader. So like, would I want to read this? Is there something here that is going to distract, or is there not enough context for the reader? That if you can find somebody who is also an author, that could be very beneficial. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes they try to insert their own writing style, and then it just ends up being a pain in the butt. But ask for samples. Ask for samples from people. Some editors will charge for samples because it's time out of their schedule. Others will, depending on the size of the sample that you're looking for, will do a free sample. But definitely give them or ask around for samples, because you could potentially find the right editor for you, and do multiple. Look at multiple people, and don't ever have the same editor do the same, all 3 edits. Don't do that. For my sweet romances, I do beat sheet and I send to my editor and publisher, and I'll start writing until they're happy. That's a good way to do it. Getting the beat sheets, getting those things figured out beforehand. And I've done that with my authors as well, where we sit down and we literally plan out. I use a 3-act structure, like I said, to build in a baseline, even if it changes later on, which is totally fine. Because we make those adjustments as we go, but I build it in a 3-act structure because it allows us to pace everything a little bit more accurately. And going through and doing that allows us to get that big picture planned out from start to finish. And I actually finished up a couple of them this week with some students of mine through the publisher. And I was like, guys, this flow looks amazing. Like, this is going to be absolutely fantastic once we get it finished. So building that out and sharing it with your editor. Don't surprise your editor. Don't do that. We need the context, so don't say like, oh, I want to save it as a surprise. Please don't do that. We hate surprises sometimes. I would rather know what's coming and then dread the anticipation of it coming, than not knowing something is there and it pops up and I'm like, oh my Lord, that's not going to work for anything. So please don't, please don't do that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, messy first draft. First draft should be messy. I mean, really. How do critique partners fit in with all this? I see a lot of people using CPs and know that they can help with developmental stuff, yet I feel like it's still useful to hire a developmental editor. Yes. Here's the thing. Critique partners and beta readers are wonderful, wonderful resources. They are not editors. They're simply not. Unless they are doing developmental editing, they are not going to know certain things about doing a developmental edit. You can do research, you can do courses, you can, on Udemy and that kind of stuff. But unless you're doing it and you know what the industry is looking like and you have a bigger perspective, they're not going to give you a complete picture. They are wonderful resources. I personally don't recommend using betas until you are ready and you have a crafted story that you have edited, and then you present to them and say, does this fit? Do you like it? What are your thoughts on it? And then they're not inserting their opinions on the story, like what they need. Like, well, I don't like this character. And it's sometimes it's very arbitrary advice that you get from critique partners and betas. Not always, but I use them very strategically when I'm writing. So it definitely does not replace a developmental editor, or a copy editor, or a line editor, or a proofreader. It does not replace them. Proofreading and editing course. So now I'm in that tricky space of needing clients while I'm still learning myself. Confidence is a pain. I feel that. Yep, I definitely feel that. It is a very tricky place to be. Level tips for effective weaving multiple POV storylines together without losing all the appropriate beats while also keeping a tight pace. So when it comes to multiple POVs, this is what I write primarily. I have 6 POVs in my book, and I'm trying to squeeze that in 60 to 70,000 words. Why I decided to do that to myself, I'm still not entirely sure. But this again comes down to the milestones and chapters. So you want to look at, okay, what is my outline? What is my big picture? And then you want to look at, okay, whose POV would show this most effectively? What is going to be the benefit of showing it from this character's POV versus this character's POV? There is a finesse to it that I don't believe can be taught. It is a tangible feel when it comes to writing multiple POVs, because you have to be very, very strategic about it. I don't typically recommend a lot of scene breaks, no more really than 2 scene breaks in a single chapter, and switching POVs, because it slows down your pace, it breaks your flow, and ultimately it just kind of chops up the story a little bit. Also, don't show POVs necessarily in the same scene. So if you have one location, right, and POV 1 is over here, POV 2 is over here, they're in the same location, but they're not necessarily interacting. That could be an interesting way to show different POVs. You're giving 2 different perspectives. If you're having a location here and a location here, and there's 2 separate POVs, you need a good transition, like a nice fade to black chapter, to make sense of why we're jumping over here. Don't leave off a chapter with a big cliffhanger right before switching a POV, unless you're being very, very strategic about it, because then what ends up happening is that I don't give a flying rat's crap about the other person that I'm now reading. I want to know what happened with that character. So there is, again, it's a finesse. It depends on the story. Depends on what you're doing. You have to be very, very strategic. You have to be forward thinking about whose POV is going to match up where, and how you weave those together is going to depend on the story. It's going to depend on the pace. I wish I had more examples of books that I've read that have done this well. I'm not even saying that my book is going to do it well, which is why I'm looking forward to having editors come in. But I have 2 main POV characters, and then I have 4 other side characters that end up having POVs over the, actually, no, 3 other characters that have POVs over, no, it is 4, sorry, 4 other POVs that happen over the course of time in the book. That is in part because I'm setting up some of those characters for book 2. Book 1 focuses primarily on the relationship between 2 characters in particular. So if you're having a series, you can do it as setup. But I would pick 2 main POV characters that you're going to see the world through, write the primarily from their point of view, and then insert the other ones in there as needed. And before we're thinking about it. Okay, gotta scroll back up here. Yeah, and honestly, most people do. Most people do betas right away. It's not what I recommend because I've seen too many authors get discouraged by using betas, and the problem is sometimes the betas don't even read the genre that the person's writing in, and so they're just like, this sucks. You don't even read it, so how would you know? So that's a problem. Yep. Yeah, exactly. You want to have a developmental editor and then send it to the betas, and then at the very least, um, if you use betas after a developmental editor to make sure that you've implemented everything the developmental editor gave you, I think that's a good way to do it. Let's see. Yep, copy and line edits. Whew. Don't like those. Don't like those at all. Oof, yeah, I feel that. Looking for deep runners if anyone was interested. Adult romance, nice. Already tried betas before I even finished. Yeah, don't give your book to betas before you finished. Do not do that to yourself. Obviously, if you have, there's no going back. I recommend not to do that. Don't give it to them before they're done, because then the betas start inserting their opinions on how they think the book should end. And again, I've watched it happen to too many authors to recommend it. Have a set of questions you want answered. Yes, give them guidelines. Don't let them just run around willy-nilly and throwing out stuff. Don't do that. Let's see. Holy smokes. Current whip is writing stories fully and sequentially. Once I've written it all, I go back and figure out where to weave the timelines together. Yeah, that's one way to do it. Definitely. Yeah, there's an art to switching it. I'm still working on it. And what I try and what I tell my students primarily, and what I've started telling more of my clients, is you want to create the illusion of variety while you're writing. And so that is kind of weaving some of the things in and out together without building in a repeated pattern. Just because I don't like to see repeated patterns in books. I like the feeling of variety. So even if they trick me, I'd much rather be tricked. Does multi-POV, I live a cliffhanger for a chapter, then where I switch characters. It's not to say that you can't. It's that you want to be very, again, forward-thinking, strategic on how you do that. Because if it's too big of a cliffhanger, then and you switch it to somebody else who's in a different location, or it may not even pertain to me personally, I'm like, I don't care what is happening with this person. I want to know what the cliffhanger was. You can get away with it if you only have a middle, like one chapter in between. I try not to do that in my own writing. I try, if it's a mini cliffhanger where it's a smaller thing, then you can get away with that a little bit easier. Yeah. If you switch it too much, it just gets confusing. Holy frick, that's a lot. One scene or chapter. Okay, yeah, I mean, you can, that does work. Good, I'm so glad that was helpful. 60 to 70K, holy cow, I don't know if I can manage doing anything under 110. It is being very personal. Again, very, I lost my train of thought on the word that I was going to use. So the way that I build my books, as I build them as bingeable books. So, and this is in the writing template. This is kind of what I go into, is that when you create a bingeable book, you create chapters that are, I keep clapping, that can be read in 10 to 15 minutes. Because I used to work in fast food. And so I know that every now and then, when the benevolent dictators that rule over your life give you a 10-minute break, sometimes you want to zone out for that 10 minutes. Well, I want to create my books to be a book that, whether it's ebook, paperback, whatever, they can open it up and they can binge that chapter right then and there. I want to have a book that someone literally will pass out reading from exhaustion, because they cannot put it down. That is how I build my books. That's how I've helped other people build their books. So even if you had 100,000 word novel, and again, a publisher isn't necessarily going to publish something like that. So self-publishing is probably the route that you're going, I'm assuming. You can still build that bingeable book with 100. I mean, you could build a bingeable book regardless of how long it is. Oh, it jumped again. So I right now have a how to start your fantasy story course up on Teachable. The link is down below for that. And it is in 3 parts, about 12 videos, I think. You can get through it in like an hour and a half writing it. And it actually includes the worksheet. I should mention that. Should have mentioned that earlier. It does include the worksheet that I went through today to help you build it. The worksheet as its own thing is if you don't really want to, you just want to do it yourself. And so you can do it yourself. The thing with the course is that it actually includes the worksheet. It walks you through a lot of the worksheet. And if you take time to work through the worksheet, it will take you a little bit longer, but the videos themselves you can get through in an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And that is what I have currently. I do have plans and am working on building, let's see, a book writing basics course that is going to be a little bit more broad. Science fiction, romance, self-edits, author platform, weaving faith and writing together, those kinds of things. Betas were amazing. Betas are incredibly helpful. That's good that they didn't offer. I've run into that. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If there's a chapter between there, you can do that. I've seen it where authors have left off with the cliffhanger and then it's been like 3 or 4 chapters. And then when we finally get back to it, I've forgotten about what it was that I was supposed to be excited about. Hey, glad that you were able to make it. Do you guys have any other questions? Like Captain America, I can do this all day. Not literally, because I do have another thing that I have to do later on, but I could do this for most of the day. My voice is shot though. Oh, another great opening line is one that you circle back to at the end of a book. Stephen R. Lawhead's trilogy, The Song of Albion, opens up this way. It opens up with "It all happened with an oryx," and the end book leaves off with "It all happens with an oryx." Absolutely fantastic trilogy. I won't go into details of how it circles back around because #spoilers. But it is a fantastic read if you want some good Celtic fantasy. Yeah, fantasy will definitely do that. And also singing beforehand. Well, not today, but I was singing yesterday while I was doing my edits during my playlist and just rocking out. So that doesn't help. Ooh, good question. I love these. I actually read prologues. I know there's this arbitrary thing out there, especially floating around Facebook groups where it's like, no one reads prologues anymore. Honestly, I think that's a load of crap. People read good prologues. People don't read info dumpy prologues. So if you're going to do a prologue, then you, first off, I would write it and then really scrutinize it and go, okay, is this really just a chapter 1? A prologue should be something that sets a context for everything that happens. It is not, under any circumstances, a place where you info dump the entire history of your world or the events, or just like, here's all of it. Like, don't do that. That's regurgitating stuff, and readers hate that, which is why prologues have a bad rap. I've read plenty of amazing prologues. It is just a simple matter of building in the context, weaving in the world. I have a prologue, not for this book that I'm working on, but one of my future books. And the prologue takes place and it shows the birth of, it's a birth scene and there's like all sorts of craziness happening. And it sets up the precedent for what happens years later. That without that context, you'd be like, what? And it wouldn't make any sense. So I show it, but I'm not info dumping. I am building the world as I go. World building, when done right, is really about implying a lot and showing how the world impacts the characters. And you can do that in a prologue, in a good prologue. An epilogue is, again, is it going to make more sense of just have it be the final chapter, like a chapter rather than an epilogue, which is kind of like the aftermath kind of thing. I've read good epilogues where it gave that, it's like a double ending. So it was like the story ends and then it kind of fades to black and then it kind of comes back as like months later or years later or whatever. And then you're kind of showing what happened next. If it's a single book and you're not going to plan on showing what's next in a later installment, write an epilogue. And again, don't leave off on a cliffhanger if it's supposed to end the book. End it. Period. You can leave the world open. You don't have to close the world down, but you wrap up the story for that particular character. That would be how I would do both of those things. But I think both of them have their place. It's the same kind of thing when people say like, well, Stephen King said adverbs are the pathway to hell. It's not true. Overuse of them, yes. In dialogue, that's how we speak. So in dialogue, it makes sense. Outside of dialogue, yeah, you want to be careful about how much you use it because it can weaken the sentence and there are better words to use. You just have to be diligent about it. That's actually why I like Pro Writing Aid, because I can just double click on something and it gives me different ideas for how to use it. And then maybe I reconstruct the sentence in order to fit it. That's how you do it. You don't just take it and just do that. Don't do a prologue just simply because everyone's like, they don't work. It's not true. Wow, holy smokes, you guys were fast. Prologues get a bad rap. I agree. I love prologues. Yeah, it's weird if you don't read the prologues. I was thinking about asking prologues too. I love prologues. Yep. I have epilogues in my main series. I don't like prologues, but if a prologue is there, I assume it's for a reason and I'm going to read it. Right. If a prologue is there, it's implying that there's some background context that you're going to need, as long as you're not info dumping. That's the only thing that I would say is just don't info dump. I have put prologues in secondary series I'm working on. They're told from POV of a character that's not a big part of the story, but it sets up the events. Yeah, that's a way to do it. Nice. Yeah, you can tie them together. And again, it's as long as you're doing it with purpose. If it's just kind of like a throw on at the end, then it's not necessary. But if you're planning on having it be kind of a transition thing, then you could do that. Another interesting thing to consider doing, and I haven't quite figured out how to work this into what I plan on doing with my books, is that you can actually, if you could take those epilogues and actually make them as part of like a mailing list, like you get a special bonus content that comes out right before the next book is due to come out. That could be an interesting way to kind of build engagement up. So just kind of throwing that out as an idea. So because I think that would be a fun way to do it. So yeah, any other questions that you guys have? Because I freaking love talking about writing. It's what I'm passionate about, which is why I was talking at about 50 miles an hour during the actual presentation. But I'll wait just a minute longer to see if there's anybody who has some additional questions. Good stuff. What was there something else? I feel like somebody asked me a question earlier. I don't remember if I actually answered it or not. Just scrolling back through here real quick, just to make sure. Yep, and I don't see anything. So, all right, guys. Well, I think I will wrap it up here. If you want more Bardly content, oh wait, thanks again. All right, yeah. I hope you guys enjoy the courses. If you guys can leave comments on there if you have any additional questions. Like I said, at the end of the course, there's a link to the Bard Storytelling Academy Facebook group, and have not had it. I can't see when people finish unless I pay another like $60 a month, and I just can't afford that. So when you guys finish, head over to the Facebook group. I plan on making that a fun writing community that is unlike some of the other writing communities on Facebook that say they're super supportive, and then all the trolls show up and just start bashing people's work. I don't do trolls. I kill trolls. I banish trolls. I whip out the ban hammer that looks a little bit like Mjolnir, and I just start smashing heads. That's how I roll. But if you guys want more, make sure that you go down, like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon. I do have more stuff coming. I have a live stream next week with a student of mine who I helped the developmental edit of her book. I've done 2 previous author interviews with students of mine and current client of mine. I got lots of streams planned. So if you guys want more, go down and make sure to subscribe. If you want a free writing template, since the current link is not working, you can check out my website. Big red button that says free writing template. You can click on that. It'll take you there to sign up. I don't spam people. I only send out an email about once a month-ish. Heavy on the ish. Subbed earlier. I thought I was already, but I am now for sure. Cool. Glad that you guys enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you guys around, interacting with you guys in the course. And if you have any questions, comment down below for those of you who are watching later. And then you can also just hit me up on pretty much any other social media. I'm always hanging around. Thank you guys so much, and have fun with the streams later on. Take care, guys.